The U.S. government is confirming for the first time the names of the Russian hackers who are suspected in the alleged interference in the U.S. elections. NBC News confirms that both are also wanted by the FBI. Yevgeny Bogachev, whose alias is Lucky12345, yep, there it is wanted for racketeering, bank fraud, money laundering as well. The FBI also says Alexei Balan, who was originally from Latvia, is charged with numerous computer-related crimes, as well as aggravated identity theft. And joining me now is retired Major General BrettWilliams, the former Director of Operations at U.S. Cyber Command. We appreciate your being with us right now, Mr. Williams. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security released a report on the Russian hacking campaign that was known as Grizzly Step. Can you Cliff's Notes this for us? What most important information did we learn from this report?
Yeah, Peter, well, thanks very much. And I would take two major points out of that report. First, it was very pointed in its description of Russian activities in cyberspace, not just as it pertains to the activities around the election, but the activities that they are taking a cyber against universities and government institutions, and in fact the destructive attacks that have been attributed to the Russians in the Ukraine and others as far as critical infrastructure and those sorts of things. So point one is the Russians have integrated cyber into their national security policy, and they're playing by a different set of rules than we are, and we really have to think about how we would do that. The second thing I would take out of the... Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted. No, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say the second major point is that I would argue the DNC and the Clinton campaign were woefully unprepared for this, because as you read through that joint analysis report, there was nothing cosmic or super technical about how the Russians gained access into that information environment. It was spear phishing, it was links, it was the sort of things that we talk about every day you have to do to protect yourself.
Spear phishing and links means you click on the wrong place and all of a sudden you give up your data, right?
Exactly, and don't get me wrong, these were sophisticated emails that would entice you to click on that link, and the link looks very realistic. But if there was the right culture and the right leadership, I think, when this campaign started, they would have said, hey, look, cyber, that's a potential strategic risk for us. Right. And we are going to be all over these types of things to train our users not to be subject to these type of an attack.
And Major General Williams, as you say, that the U.S. has sort of failed to this point to define a post-Cold War strategy against Russia as it relates to cyber. Specifically, you say we've been too reactive. What is the real risk in that right now for the United States unless things change more urgently?
Well, I think the large strategic picture, I'd pick off on what Admiral Stavridis said is what has been our post-Cold War strategy to deal with Russia. And we could kind of get away the first 15 years or so, but certainly in the last 8 years, Russia has demonstrated that they have a strategy. And it's operating in cyberspace, it's operating in physical space, and I would argue in all of those spaces that we're pretty reactive. I mean, look at this. It took us a couple of months to decide what our reaction was going to be to this. We had to, I know there were arguments in the White House about the executive order. Did the rules that we had set up for ourselves allow us to respond? And so being reactive in cyberspace, the problem is that we haven't really figured out how to deter somebody in cyberspace. And so we can't afford to be reacting to that. We have to understand what it is we're going to do to first defend ourselves and deny people the capability to take advantage of us. And we've got to take it seriously, both in our government and in our business sector. And then secondly, we have to know very quickly what we're going to do as we get initial indications of something happening. And again, I'm very concerned about potential for attacks on our critical infrastructure. The things we see the Russians and the Chinese doing in other countries, you have to assume those are dress rehearsals for things they would like to do with the United States.
Major General BrettWilliams, thanks for your time on this day.
Thank you.
Coming up, an insider's